I am a licensed funeral director. I'm a fourth generation licensed funeral director.
Let's talk about death and funerals. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
So I was never going into it.
This is an event.
Yes, it is a life cycle event.
Yes.
And I didn't know what I wanted to do next.
Somehow this is different. Nobody wants to talk about it. I remember when I used to sell life insurance, people didn't want to talk about dying.
Right. People are more willing to confront the reality and talk about it. So maybe they didn't pre-plan, or their parents didn't pre-plan for their parents. But now they're thinking about making things easier on themselves. And then it gets them thinking about, what do I want for my funeral service?
Right.
I understand where people get confused.
Yes.
Right? It's a plot of land.
Right, yeah.
And that is what you're purchasing. It's a plot of land, but how many graves are on the plot?
Right.
You don't know what you don't know.
Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors, where I was a certified senior advisor, and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Today we're here with Andrea Resnick from Legacy Concierge.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. I'm excited to have you on today. I met you at a GPNY meeting this past month, and you're describing what you did, which is different than what other people do.
Yeah.
Normally I tell people just to tell how they got there, but you have to first spend 30 seconds on just a snippet of what you do so people understand your journey.
So I am a licensed funeral director. I'm a fourth generation licensed funeral director. And I decided a few years ago that I wanted to do more consulting and work with individuals and families. So last year I created a separate consulting business to do just that, to meet with them and explain their options and connect them to the best resources.
So you're a funeral consultant.
Exactly.
As I said, a title I'd never heard before. They're funeral directors.
Yep.
Who you typically see when someone passes away.
Correct.
But now, so how you got there is really not even really, is there a story to it besides being fourth generation?
There is.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was never going into it.
So you thought, yeah.
Exactly. So I thought, because when you assume, what happens?
Right.
But here I am. So I grew up with my family's business in Queens and never thought I was going to do that. And I graduated from college, started corporate event planning, loved it, but it was time for a transition.
Corporate event planning. This is an event.
Yes, it is a life cycle event.
Yes.
And I didn't know what I wanted to do next. Our bookkeeper was retiring. And I thought, all right, I'll do this until I figure out what I want to do next. And I never left. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's the story how you got here.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was going to be no story. It's fourth generation. It's what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the funeral business, and you're consulting with people. Are you consulting people at the time of death? Or are you consulting with people prior where they're planning?
So both.
Okay.
I do both pre-need or pre-arrangement consulting and at-need consulting, but they're different because at-need, there is a time factor.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that I'm not taking time away from people, that I'm getting them into the right hands immediately.
Time meaning their personal time, because there's a limited amount of time to you now and the time you bury somebody, or time that you worry about. You worry about their personal time that's spending with their family, or the elapsed time?
Well, both.
Okay.
Because I'm a big believer in, for mourners, they need to be doing what is necessary, which is grieving.
Right, not planning a funeral tomorrow.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I prefer that people call me if it's not, or if it's at all feasible.
Right.
Before something happens, if somebody's sick, because it does allow them to just do what they need to do.
You're not taking that time that they need.
Exactly.
Right.
But the other part of it is that things need to happen immediately. So when somebody passes away, we need to make sure that their loved one is getting into the funeral home's care, that the information is there for any necessary paperwork, for coordination with a cemetery, a crematory, whoever the parties are, that everything's being done as quickly as it can so that the service can be set.
Right. So that's interesting. We talk about timing. I assume you're, I don't say not multi-denominational in that you work with non-Jewish families, Jewish families, I mean, of all different faiths, or?
So my background is working with Jewish families. It's what I know. My family's funeral home was a Jewish funeral home. But that being said, there's a lot of interfaith marriages. There's also the ability to be able to help everybody. When I went to mortuary school, we learned about all cultures, all religions. And I'm lucky that I have, within my personal network, relationships and resources to help me if I have questions.
Oh, there you go.
To be able to better help a family.
Out of your faith.
Yes, outside of my faith. Yep.
Just with the Jewish religion, we try to bury very quickly.
Exactly.
Which makes it so much, I assume, much more difficult from a time. Well, although you're probably used to it after 4 generations.
I'm used to it, but it is interesting because I hear from other funeral directors that it's easier to schedule a Jewish funeral.
Well, easier for them, but how about for the family?
I think it's in perspective.
Right.
Because it's the tradition, it's the ritual. And so in Judaism, we want to bury as quickly as possible for the mourning process to begin taking place. So for the family, it's a very difficult, traditionally 24 to 48 hours.
Right.
But it also is a benefit because of the mourning process and also from a funeral home perspective. And why I was really drawn to this work is the intimate relationship that you build in those 24 to 48 hours is, I mean, I'd never really been exposed to that before. And that's how I really built my business is you become that trusted resource because of the immediacy and the intimate nature.
Right.
And so, again, it actually benefits both the family and the funeral home.
Right. Because being Jewish myself, and I remember both my parents passed in the last handful of years, having to get them, having to get them in the ground, if you will, so quickly. It was, we had those plots and everything else, but that's all we had. And suddenly, and I thought it was better about by the time my mother passed, she was second, but we waited till the last minute for all that, till the time we had to bury her then as well. And she'd been sick for years. We knew it was coming, just a matter of when. Why didn't we do anything in advance? And it was during COVID, which made it a little bit easier because there wasn't much to do.
Right.
So, but with that said, I like to think it was smarter than that to wait. I mean, we are financial planners, financial advisors. It's what we were supposed to do, plan people's lives that way. But somehow this is different. Nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, when I used to sell life insurance, people didn't want to talk about dying. Right. In this case, you're talking about, in many cases, death. That's already happened. Or dying. It's just, as you said, a taboo subject. But I was going to say is doing it within the 24 hours and starting the grieving process really was a good thing. Because as stressful as it was in that 24-hour period, it gave you a chance to focus on grieving after. There really wasn't a lot of grieving time in that 24 hours. Right. I grieved for my father, who was my best friend, basically, for a half an hour. Then it was time to get my act together and put a funeral together. And then the grieving began. And I remember sitting Shiva was an exhausting process. It is. You don't realize. 7 days of that was really grueling, and I'm happy I did every minute of it. So, but it's every religion is different, and I've been to many wakes and so on. They seem to be grieving publicly. We tend to grieve, I mean, within the community, but I found most of my grieving was when I was alone. And when the guests weren't there during Shiva and so on. And it's funny because I get questions from people of, I've never attended a Shiva before. Yes. What do I do? And then recently I've had from friends who've never attended a wake before. Right. What do I do? Yes. And I say it's, we're grieving. Right. So it's the same practice, just in different ways. Right. One happens before the funeral, one happens after. Right. Like you said, one's more public, one you're going into somebody's home. Right. Which it's just a different experience. A different level of intimacy, right. Exactly. Yeah. But the overall practice is we're all grieving and mourning. Correct. I remember my wife went to a spiritual leader, an Indian spiritual leader, I don't know what religion, but it's funeral. And she called her friend, the daughter of the gentleman who died, and said, what do I do here? Because again, they've all, not only have religious differences, they have cultural differences.
Exactly.
With us Americans, there's a few religious choices, but once you have a different cultural background,
Yep.
So you could be Christian in America or Christian from India, and the funeral's going to be very different.
Exactly.
So, that was interesting. And I went to one funeral, it was a Baptist funeral, and it was a client of mine. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. And they just talked up. Everyone just stood up whenever they wanted. Everyone just took turns standing up. Probably not a single person gave a eulogy. Must have been 30, 40 people stood up. He was a principal of a school. And he was an older man when he passed. But they all got up one at a time in their seats, no podium, and just talked about him. And it was so nice.
Yeah.
So it's nice experiencing these different cultures.
I 100% agree. I actually used to ask to go out on calls when we had other religions, other cultures that were utilizing our services, because I love nothing more than to see the similarities but learn the differences.
Right. I will say.
Because I think, again, when I was in mortuary school and you're learning about different cultures and religions, the process, it's the way that we practice it is different, but it's the stages of mourning.
Right.
And so it's just so interesting to see where we coincide and where we divert from one another.
Right. Fascinating. It is. I can see why you love what you do. So let's explain. So let's talk to, someone's watching now and they have mom and dad. Let's the most people deal with, you talking to children if someone hasn't passed yet? You talking to the seniors or the children of the seniors?
It depends. On the pre-need side, which is a really interesting line of work, I'm either dealing with the individual themselves or their children.
Okay.
And sometimes people ask me, when's the right time?
Right.
I can't give an answer. You have to be ready to have that discussion. But with children, I see that if they're planning for an aging parent, they start to think about themselves.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Got it.
And because of what you said, I mean, we live in a different time where the conversation is more open.
Yeah.
And people are more willing to confront the reality and talk about it. So maybe they didn't pre-plan.
Right.
For, or their parents didn't pre-plan for their parents. But now they're thinking about making things easier on themselves. And then it gets them thinking about, what do I want for my funeral service?
Right.
What are my options?
Yeah.
So it's, again, people open up in ways that you never assumed or thought they would. And I see it from both the individual and the children.
That's interesting. Okay, so now when someone comes to you, let's assume they're planning, they're being smart, unlike me, they're planning in advance, and I'll get to how they find you in a minute, but they find you. Mm-hmm. What's the process look like?
So I try and make it as easy as possible. I know we really, 9 times out of 10, don't want to be having this conversation.
Right.
So
let's talk about death and funerals. Yeah, why not? Yeah. Death and my funeral. My death and my funeral. Yes, that's something everybody wants to talk about every day. Yeah.
Not exactly the most exciting subject matter, but we're here.
Right.
So we have 2 options. One is a 15-minute consultation. I want anybody who's ready, willing, and able to have the conversation to have it.
Right.
And then I have my more formal.
Right.
I have a fee structure that I provide to families, and I sit and I do an intake with them. And during that intake, we go over statistical information. We review service options, merchandise options, so that they understand what the conversation will be when they're walking into a funeral home. If they are having a burial, for instance, and they have cemetery property, okay, then I will get that information from them and I'll provide it to whatever funeral home they select. If they don't, then I need to connect them with, and I always give options, a cemetery that will be a good fit for them. And we talk about what the burial means,
right.
what a plot is, how many plots or spaces
Right.
do we need? Who else are we going to be
So
planning
a
for?
plot is not one space?
No.
Oh,
So
I
a
didn't know that.
grave,
Oh, please, everyone may learn if I'm learning. Hopefully,
yeah.
let's see.
So if you purchase a plot, it could be a one grave plot.
Oh,
But if you purchase a family plot, well, what does that family look like? Is it 2 graves? Is it 4?
oh, right. So
Is
it's a
it
family
16?
plot. Okay.
So there's the actual, because
Yeah.
I understand where people get confused.
Yes. Yes.
Right? It's a plot of land.
Right. Yeah.
And that is what you're purchasing. It's a
Yes.
plot of land, but how many graves are on the plot?
Right. Yep.
So, but we have that conversation of what it means to them. And I always say you're purchasing real estate.
Right.
So we need to figure out who.
See, that's why I brought you on. We're real estate investors. See, it's a real estate podcast.
Yeah, goes hands in hand.
That's right.
And I truly mean that, because when you're at the front of the cemetery, that's a different piece of real estate than
Right.
in the rear of the cemetery.
Uh-huh.
So we go.
So it's actually priced differently?
Yes. Yes.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I learned that's 2 things. Go ahead. What else I can learn today?
I'll tell you a third
Go
one in
ahead.
a second. So we go through all of that information.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it comes down to is, do you have a funeral home that you would like to be using?
Mm-hmm.
If not, can I provide you with a few recommendations? Once we decide who we're using, I will make a warm introduction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anybody going into this. We're having the conversation. We're forming a relationship. Let me be your conduit.
Right.
So I provide the necessary information to the funeral home. I let them know that they're coming in to meet with them, what selections they're looking for. And then I like to do a warm handoff for that family. And then there's also, and I learned this throughout my tenure as a funeral director, once you start the conversation, people will open up about other things. So I like to say I built my business from my experience, but also I was lucky enough to work with my father and grandfather, so I used their expertise. And what they built was a funeral home that provided additional resources. And people come to us afterwards and they need, maybe actually as I'm speaking to them, I find out that they haven't reviewed their will in 7 years. So they may need a trust and estates attorney to do that. Maybe they need investment assistance. Great. Here's a financial advisor or a few.
Right.
Or I live in South Carolina, but mom's in New York. She's moving into a senior living. I need to sell her house. What do I do?
Right.
Then it comes into, we have so many people that help with senior moving and real estate.
Right.
So there's a lot of moving pieces, and I know it takes a village.
Yeah.
So my long-winded answer.
Yeah, you're the mayor. You're the mayor of this village.
Right. But really, it's not just helping them through the funeral planning,
Right.
but making sure that they have the resources that they will need in the future.
Way more than I thought you would get involved with. Way more than I thought. I mean, dealing with realtors and so on and financial advisors, that's way beyond the scope of dealing with a funeral. So I'm very impressed. I describe someone else in this business, in that chair, as a walking Rolodex, which is in essence what you are.
Yeah,
and
I love that.
That's we do the same thing. Because when people call us, we have a probate website. Tell people work their way through probate. We're not attorneys, but 30 years I dealt with clients passing away. My clients were retirees, so they were older. And I did that. And in our business, we buy a lot of houses from estates. So, or people, seniors who are moving to facilities. So we know the process inside and out. So we sort of give them non-lawyer guidance.
Right.
And if they need referrals to lawyers and so on, I'm also that Rolodex and movers and packers and movers and shakers, I should say. So we kind of work the same way. And I don't charge for any of that whatsoever. I make my living in real estate. I provide that as a service if people need it. So it's interesting. So you're explaining the process, you're working through the process, you're helping them select the proper cemetery if they don't have, select the proper funeral home. So first of all, I want to go back to my question. You saying that plots in the back are less expensive than the plots in the front. How about plots under a tree? Because someone told me shade plots are more expensive. Is that true? And I have a question about that.
I don't know the answer to that, and I am willing to say I don't know the answer, because the third thing I was going to tell you fits in perfectly.
Go ahead.
In New York State, where I'm licensed, you cannot own a funeral home and a cemetery.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or you cannot own a funeral home and a crematory.
Right.
So I am happy to get an answer. And this is My favorite thing to tell families if I don't have the answer,
Right.
I can get it for
Right.
you.
And that way you'll know if the
then-
next time someone asks you.
Exactly. And then I will learn.
Right.
But different cemeteries have different rules.
Right.
You know, some have requirements for size, for an outer burial container. Some have, you know, and with trees,
Yeah.
some families want to take them down.
Oh.
Some, you know, there's all these different things. We actually have a family plot that's under a tree, and it is shaded, but there's a lot of, you know, the leaves fall,
That's right.
and there's cleaning that has to be done. So
people-
pros and cons.
Pros and cons. You say I want a nice shady side of the hill, and thinking, I don't know. I'm a firm believer something goes on after, but whatever that is, I
Well,
don't
and
know.
if you
But
like
I
to
don't think it's.
tan.
If you like to tan, right?
Yeah.
I burn. So I
Same.
but I don't think the plot is where my soul or whatever is going to be. But everyone's got their own thing going on.
Exactly.
So, but the reason I said the tree, because if you charge more for under a tree, you would think there'd be more trees at cemeteries. That's why I make the comment. It seems like a no-brainer at that point. If you're charging more for shade, make more shade. Put a gazebo in or something.
Well, you could have the yews.
That's right.
The planting on top, and that provides shade. So,
Yes.
like I always say, people, unless we ask or discuss it, we don't know the options.
Right. Correct.
And then once we do, we can make the decision of where we want to be and how we want to have the grieve.
Okay. So let me ask you a question about the yews you
Yeah.
mentioned. Not as in use guys, use in the bush.
Yes.
And the perpetual care.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone to so many cemeteries, and perpetual care seems like perpetual careless. And is that common? I'm not going to mention which cemeteries or whatever.
So it depends on the family. Some will purchase perpetual care, some won't.
Right.
Some cemeteries build it into
Right.
the cost of the grave. So when you're purchasing the grave, you're purchasing the perpetual care.
Seems like you would have to. Otherwise, what happens? The bushes just grow to the sky?
They do mow the cemetery.
Right.
But the bushes can grow out of control if you don't have perpetual care.
Right.
So it is actually something that I think, again, people don't want to ask the questions, but we need to.
Yeah.
We need to know what our property is going to look like.
Correct. Our property.
And when you go around the cemetery and you see the stickers on the graves, it could be a yellow sticker, it could be a blue sticker.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about those.
Yeah. So some are there for planting because the seasons change and things need to be replanted. Some are there for perpetual care. But it is one of those terms that people don't really understand what it means. And in my quest to open up the conversation where it's actually a conversation I have with cemeteries, that what is it that you speak about with families when they come in? How can I help address some of the concerns with perpetual care? And it's an ongoing quest for me.
Okay, there you go. That's so. My question is not an unreasonable question at all.
No.
Yeah, because some of them just look so messy.
Well,
and
some
they have care. I know my family, they have perpetual care, and it doesn't look very cared.
Well, some families actually, and I've seen this, where they have an 8-grave plot, and somebody way back when purchased perpetual care for, let's say, the first 4 and not the back, depending on how they buried.
Right.
So it could be the left half and not the right. So it also, you need to know what has been taken care of and what hasn't.
So this, I mean, I can go down this. I'll use the word rabbit hole. I don't want to use the other kind of hole. Since we're talking about graves, so people sit down with you. You have all these different areas that you can cover and make referrals, and so on. You're going to walk into the process, make the warm introductions. So if someone now says, "Okay, I'm going to call Andrea," what kind of questions can they be expected to be asked?
It's a great question. They could be expected to be asked statistical information, which
you mentioned
I say is whatever we as funeral directors will need to complete any necessary paperwork. That could be the death certificate. And so you will be asked questions about not just, let's say, I'm going to use it as the child's planning for a parent. Not just your parent, but they will need to know the grandmother's maiden name. If it is a Jewish person, a Hebrew name.
What do you know the grandmother's maiden name?
For the death certificate.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. You're dealing with the child of the. Okay, you're right.
You may need to know, and this is interesting, or at least I think it's interesting. In New York State, the death certificate looks different than New York City. In New York City, you just need the person's occupation and the field, the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So financial advisor, finance.
Mm-hmm.
In New York State, they ask for the last place that they worked.
Really?
So, and then when you get outside, there's other questions in California. They want to know how many years you were a resident of the state. So it's just,
Why do they care?
I don't have an answer to that.
Okay.
These systems have been in place for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming it's just one of those things always been like
I
that.
have someone I can ask that question. Yeah. Okay.
And then in addition to that information, cemetery information.
Right.
If they have property, I would like to see a deed so that if I need to contact the cemetery for any reason, I have the information to be able to sit with them and call on their behalf if I can. And also, we're going to be discussing service and merchandise options, like I mentioned. So when it comes to the service, we talk about chapel versus graveside. Is there a house of worship where you'd like to have a service? Because it's not always possible given the immediacy. Or you may have to wait for when they can accommodate the service. And we talk about interment, burial, cremation. New York State is allowing for other types of interment.
What other types are there?
Human composting.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, that was passed a few years ago, and I just saw that Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn will be the first one in our area.
You can't do it in your backyard, huh?
No.
Okay.
That's actually different states, different counties have different laws.
Yeah.
You can have home burial, but you have to disclose that depending on if it's allowed where you are.
Maybe upstate when you have more land.
Yeah, there's nuances, as I like to say. And we also discuss service within the service, the preparation. So part of what I love to do is educate people on the types of preparation. And we'll talk about Jewish preparation. Do you want them to be buried in their own clothing or would you like a tahara?
Right.
And not everybody knows what a tahara is. I always say I wouldn't if I wasn't in this business.
Right.
So, helping people connect to something or find meaning in it. And the meaning could be I want grandpa, in his favorite tracksuit that he loved to wear. Yeah. Or it could be that I want a shomer, somebody watching him.
Right.
And I want him in a shroud, having had a tahara. And that's meaningful to me. So that's why the conversation is so important.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
The last minute we realized we didn't give the funeral home my father's tallis. We wanted him buried with his tallis. And then so I gave it to my brother. So my brother found one and I realized 6 months later, that really it was a tallis, not really his tallis. And starting the funeral in a couple of minutes because he got lost and got late. It was very late and so on. And I don't know what they did with it. I said, will you please put it on? They said, yes. Did they? I don't know.
I'm going to say chances are they did because we understand the meaning and the connection.
Okay.
And, it is really important to have that piece of their history and their tradition with them.
Hi, I'm Larry.
And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Homebuyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you were going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors attending open houses and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, you'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
And he was raised Orthodox, and I thought that would be important for him. It was never discussed.
Yeah.
We never discussed any of this. And I wish we did, and he was 91 years old. So you're allowed to die when you're 91 years old.
Yeah.
If you're 50 years old and you didn't discuss with your kids, it's unexpected.
Right.
And he was in the hospital for 12 days. He knew he was going to 11 days. He knew he was going to pass before he left. well, before he left, right? That's a little right. He was not coming out. So we had all this time to talk about it. And it still never came up in conversation. So that's my work. Plan this, look at it, figure it out. At these nuances, I mean, it bothers me. I don't want to say every day, but every now and then I think about that, the wrong tallis in his casket. And that bothers me. And it is what it is. Nothing I can do about it.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
And I was actually, again, and I owe my career to my family.
Yes.
But one of the really great things that they did was have a pastoral counselor on staff. We had a rabbi. And he was actually a licensed social worker.
Oh, interesting. Perfect for this.
Oh,
yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was really beneficial to me if I needed somebody to speak to also.
Right.
But he helped me understand a lot of the traditions and connections and was there to help explain things because sometimes things happen and, you know, nobody should have to be guessing, but it's, you know, tying the religious or cultural tradition and making it practical. You know, we always say, not the same instance, but if you couldn't deliver a eulogy at dad's funeral or grandpa's funeral, you didn't lose the opportunity.
Right.
You have an unveiling of a monument. You can still honor them, or you can go to the cemetery and read a letter that you wrote them.
Right.
You know, there's still ways to connect.
Yep.
Even after the person's gone. And we say that with the honor guard too.
Right.
Because if you are a member of the armed forces, and that's a big thing that I discuss with families, you're entitled to an honor guard.
Right.
And it's a really meaningful ceremony.
Right. I asked my father that one. He said no. He said he wasn't in the service long enough. He felt it would be unfair to people who he served for a year and a half. And he said then the war ended, you know, and there was no war anymore. The war would have been over. And he said they just let everyone go. He goes, it's not fair. People earned it. He goes, I didn't earn it.
But you know what? That's an important conversation because he had an option.
Yeah.
Yes or no. And the no was meaningful to him.
Yeah. And he had a veteran's benefit of like $200-something. I never took that either. I'm hoping it goes to somebody else in the vet. I'm sure it's just getting wasted somewhere else in the government, but I never claimed it. I guess he felt he didn't deserve it. He was a veteran, yes, but too short a time to really call himself a veteran.
I had two grandparents that served. One served in the U.S. on a base. The other was paratrooper.
Oh, there you go.
And he was overseas, and it was really important to him.
Right.
So me being who I am, I made sure that we had the honor guard at the, now there's a few different, actually, sorry to seg on this.
Yeah.
But we had it at the funeral home. But again, we're on the honor guard schedule. If we can't have it at the funeral home, okay. Can I have it at the cemetery? If it wasn't possible, and this was prevalent during COVID that they couldn't be in as many places, the unveiling. We can have it then.
How about bagpipes?
You know, I've never coordinated a service with bagpipes.
My father-in-law loves bagpipe music. He served, and he loves. I don't know anyone who loves bagpipe music, but he does. We joke about it. We have bagpipes at his cemetery, and
I'm sure that you can.
Yeah.
If we found a bagpiper, you can go, and that to me is, I'm a big believer in memorialization and having a place to go.
I want to make one comment. I want to take a step back because you talked about the different places you can do a eulogy. We threw a 90th birthday party for my father, and his 3 kids spoke. And it was, I don't know, maybe 50 people there or something. And he said, if I live another day, every day past today is gravy. And he said 6 months later, he goes, that was one of the best days of my life, listen to 3 of you speak. We basically gave him a eulogy while he was alive. And it wasn't intended to be that way. When he died a year later, I realized that's what that was. And I had to give a whole different eulogy because I already gave it. So, which wasn't easy. There was so much to talk about with him. But I'm getting all weepy thinking about it. But here it is. It's like 8 years later, and it doesn't matter. He's still my father. So I can't imagine reliving it. I mean, I've blocked out. I don't remember the amount of emotion I had at the time of his passing, or the funeral and so on. But to be emotional 8 years later was very intense then. But that's one comment I'm going to make as a non-funeral director. Appreciate your parents. Let them know you appreciate them. sort of eulogize them without eulogizing them when they're alive. What better time to do it? So when you do it after, it's for everyone else. When you do it before, it's for them. So that's sort of my non-advisor.
No, and that is a really good point, because I always say when somebody passes and the idea of mourning and grieving, it's for the living.
Yeah, yeah.
So for the eulogizing, it's for you to tell somebody about your relationship with them. And my grandmother passed away a few weeks ago, and people
I'm sorry about
said,
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
89.
Yep.
Nice long life.
Yep.
And when I gave my eulogy, people came up to me after and said, we really got a sense of who she was.
Right, right.
And I say, you got my relationship with her as a grandchild. She loved those who she loved fiercely. Everybody else.
Yeah.
But it's who she was.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that came across,
Yep.
that they learned something about her.
Yep. My eulogy was about one conversation with my father about my going to college, and what led up to the conversation, what he had done to lead up to that day. It was a 5-minute conversation. My 10-minute eulogy was about a 5-minute conversation, but it was indicative of who he was, and there was a perfect story in my opinion. And so I think about that all the time, because it was that's why it's the first thing I thought about eulogizing him with. It was a perfect story. So, but again, then I've repeated that story to so many people while he was alive. But we didn't talk about that at his party. We talked about more generic life events and so on. But it's nice to know that he appreciated that. But back to not pre-death eulogies, because that's not what we're here to talk about, but do it anyway. So we now know what the kind of questions they're going to ask. So I said I want to get to, how do they find you? How would someone even know to reach out to find someone like you?
So a lot of it's word of mouth.
Right.
Through families, friends,
Right.
colleagues. But I do have a website, and it's Legacy Concierge LLC.com.
Okay.
And I will repeat it because I flubbed it a little.
There you go.
Legacy Concierge LLC.com.
Right.
And it does talk about what I do with families, my process. It has pricing information because I like to be transparent.
Right. Yeah.
And then it also has forms available for them to take a look and prepare themselves. And then I also, after my own experience with my grandmother, put together a Shiva checklist so that people know what to ask the funeral home for.
Right.
If they don't have it,
Right.
who else may provide it? So if it's a Jewish family, what they could ask their synagogue for. And then for the family, I'm very big on it is your time.
Yeah.
So it has information about setting times, thinking about the donations where you would want somebody to give a donation in memory or in honor of that person, and then setting up the home to make sure that when you come home from the cemetery, everything's where it needs to be. And then for whoever's helping you coordinate, what is it that you want from them to know? Yeah. How do you want to keep track of what people send in? Because the food will be aplenty.
Yes.
The donation cards come in. So helping organize some of that just to make it easier, and so that the mourners aren't worried about what's happening next. They can do what they need to do.
Right. That makes sense. Because I got to tell you, my folks, it was all taken care of. I did nothing as far as what you're talking about, planning for after the funeral.
Which is good.
Right. My wife took care of everything, and everyone else, I don't even know who everyone else was, but it wasn't me. And she's much better at it than me, and one day it's going to be me doing it for her. So I guess she still has both her parents. So, but with that, I'm not going to be as good at it. So maybe I'm going to go on your website and figure this out. Maybe we can call you. Right, exactly. We're going to call you.
I'll be here.
I'm going to need it more than she needed it. But with that said, there's so much more to it than people realize. It's not just putting a box in the ground to be callous. There's so much nuance to that. But you talked about the word accessories. Is a word you used before. I never heard that term before. I guess that's the word you used?
Merchandise?
No, merchandise. Merchandise. I think merchandise as a casket. Is there more merchandise than a casket?
So merchandise is...
Oh, you're talking about the shroud if it's Jewish.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything that you're purchasing through the funeral home is merchandise. So if there's a cremation, then the funeral home probably has an urn If you don't like the urns, then we talk about where you can go outside of that. Caskets. And again, one of the interesting things, and you say, there's a lot more to it. There is nuance, and the funeral home needs to explain to the family what happens if they need a short casket.
Right.
What regular size, what happens if it doesn't if they do need a short casket and it doesn't come in the short size, then we need to select something else.
Right.
So having these conversations before you walk into the funeral home, I think is helpful.
I know they came in sizes.
So they
Like
do.
my mother was a little woman. She was 4'10". Well, not when she passed, she wasn't. She was a lot shorter than that by that time. But her casket was smaller than...
No.
Okay.
So it's not for height.
Okay.
And it's funny. This is I
Okay.
do TikToks about this, and it's
Okay.
my most viewed one.
Okay.
And it's not about the height of the person, although
Yeah.
somewhat is,
Right.
because it's a little bit smaller on the interior.
Okay.
In New York,
Right.
where we have some space issues, given the makeup of the cemetery. If you put a double stone in and you have a second burial, the foundation's already been poured. So it encroaches a little bit on the grave size.
Oh.
So you need a little bit of a shorter
Got
casket
it.
to go
Okay.
in. It's
Okay.
not that there's
Not
a
for short
vast
people.
difference. No.
Okay.
And it's not that there's a vast difference. It's, instead of 78 inches,
Right.
it might be 72 inches.
Right.
It just depends on the
Right.
casket and what size the grieve is. But
Right.
our manufacturers provide short caskets.
And so you're talking about burying one on top of another?
Nope.
In that case, side by side.
Side by side.
Okay. Now, in New York, can you bury vertically? Someone told me you can. I didn't
You
know.
can.
I did not know that.
In non-sectarian cemeteries
Right.
and in Catholic cemeteries and
Right.
I'm sure other denominations as well, you can bury. So either 3 deep, where there's room for 3,
Someone told me 3. I had not heard
or
that.
2 deep.
I'm
And then,
used to Jewish cemeteries.
well,
Yeah.
in Israel, they're starting to do that
Okay.
because of space issues.
Right.
And then there is a Jewish cemetery in California that I've been told does it as well.
So I don't make this a Jewish funeral podcast, but in Jewish religion, is there any prohibition against it, or just we just never
It's
did
not
it?
the way that we were set up
Right,
to
okay.
have the
Right.
burials.
Okay.
And, for our purposes here, it's one person per
Right.
grave.
Right, because space isn't exactly plentiful here on Long Island either. So
No.
yeah.
But a lot of it had to do with also the way that the cemeteries were set up when people moved to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And they were mirrored after or designed after the cities in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
we wanted to maximize space for families or society plots and all
Right.
of that.
Correct. Actually, my family has a society plot. They're part of. They're in a. Don't ask me how. The New York City postal workers.
You know
union.
what? I mentioned that the other day to
did you?
somebody that it could either be where you were from or your profession.
Neither. My uncle was an attorney, and somehow he got a deal. So my whole bury's buried. Then nobody in my family was a postal worker. But how we're there, I have no idea. But leave it to my uncle.
Yeah,
So he
there's
got a deal.
Few big ones. There's the New York City Police. They have the Showroom
Right.
Society.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history in these places. And I always say to people, and I know people have feelings about going to cemeteries. And again, it's not my business.
Right.
But I find connection there. There's a reason when you go to Salem, Massachusetts in middle school that you go to the cemetery because it's an opportunity to learn about somebody. So again, why I'm big
Right.
into memorialization
Right.
is who's the person and what can we glean about their life.
Right. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So back to
yes,
the process.
merchandise.
Merchandise. You're talking about, so merchandise is anything that. So that's interesting. So it's, I said, an urn is merchandise.
Yep.
A casket's
Casket,
merchandise.
Shroud, an outer container. If there's
That was my
a
question.
vault.
That was my next. How about in ground? I know in some states they require an outer container, an
Yes.
outside container. In New York, we don't require that.
In our immediate area,
Okay.
no.
What's
Some
not the
I'm
immediate
sorry,
area
some
then?
cemeteries do out on Long Island. There are a few.
Why?
You know what? I
Don't know.
don't know.
Okay.
I do know in other areas of the country, like in New Orleans, where the water table, or in Florida,
right. Okay.
then there is a need for it. I will tell you, just personally, in my father's family, we used vaults just as a protectionary measure.
Okay.
But it's always a conversation starter at the cemetery because it's not typical.
Right.
So when somebody doesn't know what a vault is,
Right.
or why is there a crane,
Right.
then, I've seen it a few times where it distracts people from
Yes.
what's going on, and it's an educational
Are they
topic.
concrete or are they steel? What are they?
Could be either.
Either. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
Options.
more options, more options.
More options. There's way more than people know. And
Right.
especially when it comes to caskets, I mean, for metal caskets,
Yes.
even, there's different gauges, which means the thickness of the
Yes.
metal.
And the smaller the gauge, the thicker it is. It seems counterintuitive. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know that from cemetery. Caskets, I know just from being a handy guy. But yes.
I learned it in mortuaries.
There you go. I figured, yes.
But yeah, there are a lot more decisions than just, as you said, when's the funeral?
Right.
And what grave are we using?
Right. Yep. And in my case, we just chose the simplest pine box they had. That made life easy and a lot less expensive.
It's also the most traditional. And that's when people would ask me, well, what do you think?
Right.
Because this is a question I would get in the selection room. And I would say, it is your decision. I can't make it for you, but I can provide some guidance.
Yeah.
Is there something that's meaningful to you? The best lesson I learned in the selection room was from a funeral director at Sinai, my family's funeral home, Christine. They were having a really difficult time selecting, and she said, tell me about your mother. Did she spend a lot of time in the kitchen? What did the kitchen look like? Did she have a particular type of wood on the cabinets or on the table? And I think it was oak that they settled on. But that means something to them. That is a connection that they might not have thought about.
I would not have thought about that.
And so when you're going outside of a plain pine casket, I would say to people, it depends. Do you like a stained wood? Do you want high gloss? Is there something on the interior panel that speaks to you? I can't make the decision for you, but I can help you try and find something that's meaningful.
Right. Interesting. Being that I didn't have any options, in my opinion, it was going to be plain pine box.
Yeah.
Before I walk in the door, that's was give me a plainest, pinest box. Very simple. And so what it looked like, my grandparents had buried. It looked like a coffin. I mean, it was the shape like the vampire coffin, where my parents was rectangle with the Jewish star on top.
Yeah.
But even that was more than I was expecting. I expected my grandparents that. It was literally, I could have made that in 20 minutes.
Now I know you're an excellent woodworker.
Now I'm a woodworker. That was my first career. But but with that said, my parents are a little more complicated, but not much. So they found you. They've had discussions. In discussions, they've discussed where they want to be buried, all the family history, and all the family significance to all the details. There's not a when. Hopefully, you're planning in advance, so you don't have a when. And then talk. Now you've made the introductions. Now you're not talking to them about details about caskets when you're in their home. I assume you're doing this in their home.
I can meet with them on Zoom.
Okay, because they're not always together in one place.
They're not always together in one place. It's the beauty of technology and how advanced we are.
Yeah.
I can speak to them over the phone. I can meet with them in person. For me, the biggest factor in this is where is it comfortable for you to speak about
Right. Okay.
the arrangements. And I will talk to them about caskets a little bit
Okay.
in terms of, do they have an idea of what they want? If not, then I want to know, if they have the funeral home that they know they're using, do they have a selection room on site, or are they going to be looking at pictures? Because maybe I can help them as a trusted advisor,
Right.
walk through some of that with them to get an idea before. If not, if they have a selection room in their facility, that's great. Because then people can walk in and see it for themselves.
See it, touch
and
it,
there's
feel it.
nothing better than that, to be able to see what you're purchasing.
Yeah. I don't relate to that. I just don't.
Not everybody does. And that's but
Yeah.
there's no right and there's no wrong.
Absolutely not.
And that is something that I always say to families.
Being a Jewish person and traditionalist, in my opinion, there weren't any options.
Right.
So I look at all these options and say, why are they there? Nobody, this is a Jewish funeral home. Nobody should be picking those, but people do. It's what makes them comfortable.
Yeah.
So,
and theoretically, the only requirement was wood.
Yeah.
And with, that it can return to the earth.
Right. Yeah.
So that means different things to different people.
Correct. Yep. So when I met you, I said, I've never had anyone else on who does what you do, because no one else does what you do. So
as far as I know.
As far as you know. She's the only one we're aware of that is a funeral consultant outside of a funeral home. And that's key. People, when you come into a funeral home, you're having a consultation, but it's different.
It is different.
They're not covering all the bases you're talking about, and you're talking about things beyond the funeral and about a senior citizen is what you're talking about, who one day will die. In addition, someone who's already passed.
And they will. The funeral home really is, when you go in, and I always say, you're paying the basic arrangement fee. It's the only non-negotiable fee on a funeral home contract. That they are going to be very involved with you. They are going to go through everything.
Right.
Where I differ from that
Ask my question.
I'm not tied to a particular funeral home because I want the family to go somewhere that makes sense for them. So, not just because I have a relationship.
Right.
And then once they're there, and again, I'm lucky enough to have this rich family history.
Right.
Where I have connections at the funeral homes. And I know that when I'm handing them off, it's into the care of somebody who's warm, who knows what the family's going to come in to discuss, who's prepared, and who will walk them through what they need.
Right. And so I wanted to ask you, and I'm glad you went down that path, is what separates you from what do they get without you? And I said, I know you're giving more detail, but also you're giving unbiased detail. And it's not all about me if I'm Larry Wagner Funeral Home. It's not about Larry Wagner Funeral Home.
Right.
And so the other question I've been meaning to ask you all along, my mind goes like 100 places because this is all new for me. And that is, when you're recommending a funeral home, we live here on Long Island. There's more than one funeral home here.
Yeah.
What would make the right funeral home for me? Am I looking? So I know my father, we used one for my father and a different one for my mother. And because by the time we did my mother, again, we actually didn't even use I guess you used the funeral home as a graveside funeral.
We still used a funeral
home. So, okay. I mean, we did, but we didn't use the facility.
Right.
But my father, we used the bigger one because he had a lot of people there. My mother, we used the smaller one. She wasn't going to it was going to be graveside. What would make you choose or recommend one over another besides maybe that? I have no idea.
Well, like I said, I give options. So I'll never say this is the end-all be-all for you.
Well, I'll rephrase my question. I'm not going to turn it here. I object you, Ron. Let me rephrase. What makes one more appropriate for someone? If you said, I'm going to give you this 8 in your area, I'm going to recommend you consider these 3. Okay, for sake of it, what would make those 3 stand out from the other 5 in my example?
So it comes down to what the family's needs are. Do we have religious needs?
Right.
Because that'll pare it down right away.
Well, absolutely.
Do we have geographical needs? Do we want something that's closer to the cemetery or closer to where we live?
Right.
And then I will ask, do you want a funeral home that's family owned? Do you have a preference if it's corporately owned or family owned? Some people do. So whatever I can do to get them in the right direction, that's really what it is. I mean, I also, people used to say to me, oh, there's so much competition in New York.
Yeah.
And again, we had a Jewish funeral home. Guess what? We all know each other.
Yes.
And that is a beautiful thing.
As much as there's so much competition, it's still a small universe.
It's a small universe, and we would rent from one another, especially during COVID, which is really nice. If we needed caskets, shrouds, we were all there for each other.
Yeah.
So, like you said, for me, it's geographics. And then there also are price differences. So sensitivities to the family and their needs. I want to make sure it's an appropriate introduction and referral.
Right. So this is different than just someone going to a funeral home and pre-planning. But let's talk about, I want to address that. And pre-planning a funeral. Good. I mean, because you talk about getting your ducks in a row. Does that mean paying for everything today and laying everything up, or just saying, I'm going to use funeral home A and I've got my plot. You want your plot in advance, I'm assuming. That's a biggie. Do you buy a plot at the time of death, or people usually have those in advance?
It depends.
It does depend.
It does depend. I will say that a lot of them, you mentioned your family was part of a society.
Yeah.
Those
sort of
those graves have been purchased many, many years ago.
Oh, yes.
I will say my family has a very large family plot that my great-grandfather purchased. So, I don't have to think about it, but when other people do, You want to know, was there something, do I have arrangements made before or
Right.
after? And so more people do have pre-purchase plots. We didn't really deal as much with people
Right.
who were purchasing at the time of need. But in terms of pre-arrangements, we would tell somebody if they were pre-arranging, make sure you have property first if you're being buried, because it doesn't make sense to go through all of this arranging
Right.
if you don't have somewhere to go.
Right.
So that would be before,
Right.
even before you come to us, make sure you have the property. To answer your question about prepayment versus pre-planning. So you said it. I love what I do.
Right.
I have great admiration. The one thing I will say about our industry is we use the term pre-planning as an all-encompassing
Right.
term. I like to separate it into prepaying and pre-planning.
Right.
And the reason is not everybody wants to pay for it in advance. There are absolutely pros to doing that. There are cost savings on the funeral home end and on third-party cash advances. So like the cemetery, the funeral home isn't responsible for them. Like I said, they don't own
Right.
the cemetery. But if you prepay that and it goes into an interest-bearing account, you're earning interest to help offset increases. So definitely benefits to prepaying.
Right.
But if you're not ready to do that or you don't want to, at least plan
Right.
and think about what you want or have the conversation with your kids or your family, as difficult as it may be. I look at wherever you are on that spectrum, you're doing it so you can live. Out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, definitely out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
That's how I live my life. I was going to ask you is there anything else you want to, is there anything else you would like to cover that I didn't ask?
You know, the one thing I will say that I didn't mention, and it is part of my conversation, is the officiant of the funeral service.
Oh, okay.
And that's a big one because some people belong to a synagogue, they attend a church, they are, and I may be saying the wrong, I don't know if it's a membership, but I'll say belong as well to a mosque or any other religious group. But sometimes they don't. And at times or life cycle events, people return to those practices and those traditions. And so it's worth it to have the conversation of who do you want officiating? Do you have somebody in mind? Do you not?
Right.
And I like to think about it, and I'll use some Jewish terminology here. I want to connect them with somebody who will be there, not just for the sad times, but also for the mitzvahs.
Yeah.
So that it will be a familial relationship. And if you don't want a clergy person, is there a family member? And there is preparation you need in advance. It's very hard to wing it as an officiant for a funeral. And then there's something now that's becoming more popular, if I could use the term popular with funeral service, but that's a celebrant. And that's somebody who's non-denominational, but has training to officiate a funeral service.
You say celebrant, and I need to ask you this as well, and I would have forgotten, so I'm glad you used that word. Are people planning party funerals, happy funerals, if you will? They said, let's celebrate my life.
Absolutely.
Is that becoming more popular? I've heard it. People talk about it. I don't know it actually really ever happened.
Yeah, and that comes from, again, I think it's, to me, it's the bleeding of cultures. Some cultures have always looked at it as a celebration of life, whether or not they use that terminology, but it's really celebrating who the person was.
Right.
Other times you see, and I'll use the Jewish, we're mourning.
Right,
it's,
right.
Kriya, we're cutting, we're showing an outward emotion.
Yeah.
But it is becoming a more popular or widely used term and practice. The other thing is coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't have the opportunity to have funeral services.
Correct.
It was a really interesting time. And we had, cemetery restrictions on the amount of people. Service restrictions. You couldn't even have a funeral in a funeral home for a while. But the idea of having that final service is important for people.
Yes.
The closure, the psychological benefits. And so we would say, at a later date, if you want to have a ceremony or a celebration of life, let us know when you can use the funeral home.
Right.
I know many, many funeral homes did that. But, also when so much time has passed,
Right.
and you can really look at it as a celebration of
Yeah.
the life because the funeral service has passed.
Right. It makes sense because, when someone dies young, it's one thing. But if someone lives a full life, 89, 91 years old,
Oh, yeah.
it's hard to be. When my father passed, and I said to the people who came to Shiva, I said, I'm not sad for my father, I'm sad for me. And he had a wonderful life. And and when he said at 90 that every day after today is gravy, he had another year after that, how could you argue,
Exactly. We said the same thing.
Yeah.
89, passed in her sleep.
Yep.
My cousin said it to me. She said she died knowing she was loved by her grandchildren, which is
Yeah.
all she wanted.
Yeah.
You can't be upset about that. You
Right.
can be grateful
Yeah.
that that's what she wanted and that's what she got.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you, if there's one takeaway, what would you like it to be? And I think I know it. It seems like what you said before was exactly the takeaway about, well, I'll let you say your own takeaway.
Well, my takeaway that I
yeah.
hope for people is whether it's me or
Right.
the funeral home that you're using, which please speak to them.
Right.
I want you to go in and have the conversation.
Right.
Whether you prepay, pre-plan,
Right.
doesn't matter to me, but I
Right.
want you to do something that's helpful to you,
Right.
beneficial to your family, know your options,
Right.
talk about the decisions, because again, it helps you to live.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. You said how people get in hold of you through your website. Let's repeat it now.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's Legacy Concierge LLC.com. I'm a funeral director, so while I'm not on call 24/7 anymore, people can also email me.
Okay.
It's Andrea at legacyconciergellc.com. It's the website with my name in front. So it's Andrea at legacyconciergellc.com, or I give my personal cell because it's attached to me.
There you go.
And
I know the feeling.
Yeah. So I'm available all the time. And it's 516-987-8639.
Beautiful. And I have to tell you, I thank you so much for coming. You've given an education to everyone because I don't think anyone's heard about this.
Thank you.
Nor have I. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.